Sometimes darkness doesn't hide in alleyways. It hides within the people we trust the most. In Andalusia, an ordinary day turned to a mystery. Someone set out on a short walk and never arrived. But no one suspected that evil was already close and smiling. On February 28, 2018, the people of Spain were celebrating Andalusia Day as usual, and students were enjoying their extra time off. One of those happy school children was 8-year-old Gabriel Cruz. To keep him from getting bored, the boy's father, Angel Cruz, decided to make his son happy and take him to visit his grandmother. Angel was divorced from Gabriel's mother, Patricia, but the former spouses maintained a very warm relationship for the sake of their child, so the mother easily agreed to let her son go to his grandmother's house. Angel took the boy to his own mother. The morning of February 27, 2018, the boy spent playing with his cousins, who lived near his grandmother. Around 1 o'clock, Gabriel returned to his grandmother's house for lunch, after which he asked again to be allowed to go back to the girls because he wanted to play a little longer. At first, his grandmother refused, saying he needed a short nap, but he kept persuading her, and she agreed. She looked out the window and watched him run toward the girls. In reality, only 2 houses, literally about 100 meters apart in a straight line, separated them. For Gabriel, it was normal to run back and forth because the girls really were close by. The grandmother saw the child disappear around the corner, which meant he had reached his destination. It was a completely safe neighborhood. All the neighbors knew each other and were friendly, so the woman felt she had nothing to worry about. The boy left the house around 3:45 p.m., but he never arrived at his relative's house. Since they didn't know Gabriel was coming, it never occurred to them to raise the alarm. The grandmother also believed he was playing with his cousins. The family only realized Gabriel was missing around 6 p.m. when the grandmother expected him for dinner, and he still hadn't returned. Gabriel's grandmother called Patricia and Angel, and the boy's parents decided to contact the police. The investigation began. One hypothesis was that the boy had simply gotten lost, but the parents couldn't believe it because Gabriel knew the area very well, and the route from one house to the other was straight, a path he had taken several times that day. Another theory was that he had been kidnapped by a gang of criminals for ransom. However, Gabriel's parents were ordinary workers and probably couldn't have raised a large sum quickly. With the help of the media, Patricia and Angel appealed to the kidnappers or anyone who might know Gabriel's whereabouts. They described him as a very kind, obedient, and loving child. The parents had given him the affectionate nickname Little Fish because he adored the sea and already dreamed of becoming a marine biologist at such a young age. They cried and begged anyone with information about the boy to help them, offering a reward of 10,000 euros, which friends, colleagues, and neighbors were raising for the family. Volunteers distributed flyers, noting that the boy was wearing black pants, a white t-shirt, and a red hoodie. At the same time, search teams were formed. The search, during which the police checked every corner within a 6 kilometers radius, later extending to 12 kilometers, continued for several days. Helicopters, sniffer dogs, and volunteers were all involved in the effort to find Gabriel. Among the searchers was Angel's girlfriend, Ana Julia Quezada. She was the one who made a crucial discovery in the case. Together with Angel, she was searching for Gabriel when, in the bushes 3.5 kilometers from the boy's grandmother's house, she found a white t-shirt. The t-shirt was lying near the Nijar water treatment plant. Anna recognized Gabriel's t-shirt because she had helped him get dressed that day. Laboratory tests confirmed that the t-shirt had the boy's DNA. It was indeed his. But where were the rest of his clothes and Gabriel himself? Meanwhile, all the attention of journalists and the public was focused on a 42-year-old man named Diego Ife, who suddenly became the police's main suspect. The man was very attracted to Patricia, Gabriel's mother. At first, she returned his feelings, but only until his attention became excessive and obsessive. He was obsessed with Patricia, constantly calling her, showing up at her workplace, and, worst of all, coming to Gabriel's school to intercept her. Moreover, Diego suffered from psychological disorders, and Patricia had to turn to the authorities to obtain a restraining order against him. Even that didn't stop him. He was then arrested, and upon release, an ankle bracelet was placed on him to monitor his movements. Diego fit the profile of someone who could seek revenge. He knew the child, knew his mother, could blackmail Patricia, and was unstable enough to commit such an act. On top of that, he removed the bracelet and continued calling Patricia. He was detained for violating his release conditions, and his house and car were searched. In short, everything indicated that the police were firmly focused on Diego at first glance, but in reality, things were not quite that simple. In reality, investigators quickly dismissed the idea that Diego could be the kidnapper. First of all, he lived in a town 40 kilometers from the location where the child disappeared. The police also found 3 witnesses who saw the man on his balcony around 1645. Considering that Gabriel had left his grandmother's house around 1545, there was no way Diego could have kidnapped the boy, hidden him somewhere, and returned. It was completely obvious that he couldn't be in several places at once. For a while, investigators pretended that Diego was their main suspect, but in reality, they quietly monitored Anna's behavior. What mainly concerned them was that the t-shirt Anna found belonged to Gabriel, and it was completely dry. This was suspicious because there had been heavy rain for several days prior. The most dangerous monsters are the ones who wear a mask. While the public blamed an innocent man, the real predator stood silently in the shadows, and when the lies began to crack, it became clear. This wasn't an accident, it was a calculated deception. On the day she discovered it in the bushes, it wasn't raining, but the fabric should have shown signs of having been wet for several days. By finding the t-shirt, Anna inadvertently put herself under investigators' scrutiny. The way the t-shirt was found was also strange. Anna claimed that she and Angel found it together, but in fact, she had found it alone when he fell slightly behind. Interestingly, she claimed to have sensed Gabriel's scent and found the t-shirt, even though sniffer dogs had not. Furthermore, she overacted in showing concern for the child. When cameras were pointed at her, she appeared anxious, but at home she was not upset at all. Friends, journalists, and even Angel noticed the oddities in her behavior. Yet Anna continued to shed tears, displaying exaggerated worry. This was despite the fact that her relationship with the boy had been bad. He disliked her attitude and openly told her so. Gabriel was never rude or spoiled, but he spoke the truth to Anna. When asked for her phone, she said she had lost it, and when she found it, nearly everything on it had been deleted. However, this could hardly be considered evidence, so the police tried not to show suspicion in order not to scare Anna away. The woman was placed under constant surveillance. Her phone was tapped, and a tracking device was installed in her car. All that remained was to set a trap so that the suspect would make a mistake and lead them to the child. Investigators contacted Angel and Anna, asking for the key to a remote farm owned by Angel. They said they planned to conduct a search there the next day, just in case. Angel, of course, agreed to give the key and allowed the police to search the farm. Anna naturally did not object either, but early in the morning of March 11, 2018, Anna began to act. She got into a car and drove to the farm. Interestingly, at that moment, she was being watched not only by the police, but also by journalists, who found her behavior suspicious. Upon arriving, Anna got out of the car with a blanket. When she returned, it was clear that something was wrapped inside the blanket. She placed it in the trunk and headed toward the house where she lived with Angel. As she was about to enter the garage, the police stopped her. In the car's trunk, they indeed found Gabriel's body. The arrest was recorded on video by the neighbors. Anna shouted that she didn't understand anything, that she was innocent and had simply taken the car that morning. Of course, at that moment, she still didn't know she had been under constant surveillance. Interestingly, for several days, Gabriel's father, Angel, had known that the police suspected his girlfriend, but he, like Patricia, was asked to remain calm and not show in any way that Anna was the main suspect. This was incredibly brave and surely not easy, considering he had to share a bed with someone capable of killing his son. During her interrogation, the woman confessed to Gabriel's murder, but only partially. She claimed that it had been an accident. She said that she intercepted Gabriel while he was on his way to his cousin's house. She told the boy that she was going to paint something at the farm and offered him to come along, promising they would be quick and return soon. Gabriel got into the car. They arrived at the farm. From this point, her story became increasingly implausible. Anna claimed that the boy grabbed an axe and began shouting that he didn't like her, that he didn't want her to see his father, and that he wanted her to return to the Dominican Republic. At some point, according to Anna, she placed her hand over him and took the axe away. Allegedly, he continued yelling and she just wanted him to be quiet, so she covered his mouth and nose with her hands. She cried and swore it was an accident. This might have been believable if the autopsy hadn't shown that Gabriel was also struck on the head and then strangled for about 45 minutes. He died slowly and painfully, and Anna could have saved him by calling an ambulance. Afterwards, she stripped Gabriel down to his underwear and buried his body in a shallow grave on the farm. She then threw some stones on top, got back in the car, and returned home. On March 5th, she disposed of his belongings in a glass recycling bin in a neighboring area. After falling into the trap set by the police, she rushed to the farm, dug up the body, wrapped it in a blanket, and placed it in the trunk of the car. Because the police had installed several listening devices in her vehicle, they heard her muttering angrily about the child the entire way back. She cried out that they needed the boy and that they would get the boy. It is completely unclear what she intended to do with him when she was arrested, especially since she planned to enter the garage of the house she shared with Angel. Initially, the police suspected that Anna might have had an accomplice because all the family cars, Angel's, Patricia's, Anna's, and other relatives, were searched and no trace of soil or blood was found. However, the child could only have been transported from his grandmother's house to the farm by car. In the end, the police abandoned this version, and charges were filed solely against Anna. As for the motive, there were likely two: money and jealousy. First, she was jealous of Angel's love for his son. The father adored and loved the child very much, and despite the separation, he and Patricia maintained excellent relations. They cared for the boy, and he continued to unite them. When Anna planned another trip to the Dominican Republic, Angel refused because his son was supposed to spend time with him. Clearly, this situation infuriated Anna. Second, there was money. This is partly confirmed by the fact that Anna repeatedly spoke about increasing the reward for information about the child. Furthermore, the daughter of her former lover said that Anna was very calculating and greedy. She had nearly killed her ex-lover while they lived together because she refused to call an ambulance when he fell ill. Anna came to Spain at the age of 21. She settled in Almeria. Anna had worked as a prostitute in the Dominican Republic and met her future ex-husband, a truck driver, who decided to take her out of that life and brought her to Spain. The family was raising their daughter when the couple decided to bring Anna's older daughter, 4-year-old Josefina, to Spain as well. The girl had stayed behind in her home country. Unfortunately, in 1996, her older daughter died under mysterious circumstances. One morning, Anna's husband woke up and went to the children's room to check on the girls. He didn't see Josefina, but he noticed a small table near the window. When he ran closer, he saw the girl lying on the asphalt below. She had fallen from the 7th floor. The police arrived, and in their report, they wrote that they had been unable to question the mother because she was in a state of shock. The case was classified as an accident. Now, after it became known that Anna had killed Gabriel, people began suggesting that she might also be responsible for her daughter's death. But investigating such a case after almost 20 years is practically impossible. Moreover, the earlier case had already been officially ruled an accident. The trial for Gabriel's case took place in 2019. The defense requested 3 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter, but that attempt failed. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Parole is possible after 25 years, meaning that in 2044 she may be released, but only if she proves she has been rehabilitated. Even if she is freed, she will not be allowed to live in Nijar or come within 500 meters of the boy's parents. She is also required to pay the child's parents 250,000 euros in moral damages and reimburse the state for the costs of the search. So, the perpetrator received the maximum punishment and is now in prison. One would think that Gabriel's family could finally distance themselves from the media and simply remember what a wonderful boy he was. But that was not the case. A huge number of online posts began appearing, inviting people to visit a website to see the body of the deceased Gabriel. Those who clicked the links were shown an image of the boy's face placed onto the brutally mutilated body of another child. There were other ways people tried to gain likes or earn money by exploiting the child's image. This was possible because the law does not protect the identity of a deceased person in the same way it protects the rights and identity of the living. Now, the boy's parents are fighting for the right of relatives of deceased children, whose images are used in such ways, to demand the removal of these photos or even the shutdown of such websites. The killer was punished. But the story didn't end there. The family's scars run deeper than any sentence, and even after Gabriel's death, others tried to profit from his tragedy. Let this be a reminder: evil never vanishes. It simply waits for another shadow to grow in.